I swear, I thought I'd finally escaped the family drama, carved out my own little slice of peace. But then, a single phone call plunged me back into chaos, leading straight to my own brother standing at my door with a crowbar, determined to smash his way into the life I'd fought so hard to build. Hey everyone, so my name's Emma, I'm 26, and honestly, for the first time in forever, I thought I had it all figured out. I'd finally built this life, you know? My own place, no roommates, absolutely zero family drama. Pure, unadulterated peace. Or so I thought. Because then my mom dropped a bomb on me, and everything just shattered. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where you're still in your pajamas, just trying to savor a quiet weekend, coffee in hand, scrolling through my phone. I wasn't expecting anything big, maybe a grocery list or some random family update. But this call? Oh, this call was something else entirely. Hey, honey. Mom's voice on the other end was just a little too casual, that tone she gets right before she says something she knows is going to absolutely send me through the roof. What's up? I replied, trying to sound as chill as possible, even though a tiny alarm bell was already going off in my head. Sweetie, we've been talking, and we think it's time your brother moved in with you, she chirped, like she was suggesting we go for brunch. Can you even believe the audacity? He's going through a rough patch and it's just temporary, of course. I froze. My younger brother. The golden child who'd never once in his life faced a consequence. The one mom and dad always swooped in to save from the slightest bit of trouble. The one who, honestly, just breathing near our family home used to turn everything into a chaotic mess. And now, he was coming to my home. I couldn't hold back the sheer frustration bubbling up inside me. Wait, what? You're kidding, right? Why doesn't he stay with you guys? Sweetie, you know we have our hands full, she said, like that explained everything. And your apartment is the perfect size for him. It'll only be for a few months tops. I bit down so hard on my lip, I almost tasted blood. I was fighting every instinct to scream, right there on the phone. Mom, I didn't agree to this. I live alone because I need space. I didn't sign up for this. Her tone didn't budge. Emma, it's just for a little while. You'll be fine. It'll be good for you to have family around. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like being backed into a corner, with absolutely no escape. No discussion, no negotiation. The decision was already made for me. My life, my home hijacked just like that. Fine, I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady, though it was shaking. I'll start preparing the guest room. Thank you, sweetie, she cooed, relief practically dripping from her voice. You're such a good sister. Jake will be so happy. Happy? I wanted to yell. I ended the call, forcing a tight smile as a tidal wave of fury washed over me. Jake had always gotten everything handed to him on a silver platter. Zero consequences, zero responsibility, just endless bailouts from mom and dad. And now I was expected to just welcome him into my sanctuary like it was perfectly normal? Like I hadn't spent years escaping this exact dynamic? Absolutely not. Not in my space. Not in my home. Over the next few days, that anger didn't just simmer, it boiled. Every time I walked into the guest room, a wave of dread and resentment washed over me. I could just picture it. Jake taking over everything, devouring all my food, leaving his crap everywhere, and still expecting me to cater to him like I did when we were kids. This wasn't happening. Then, Thursday morning, just as I was still trying to wrap my head around this nightmare, Mom's name popped up on my phone again. Hey, sweetie, she chirped, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I just wanted to let you know we made a copy of the spare key for Jake. He'll need it to get in when you're not around. My stomach dropped. The key? Already? What? I choked out, my voice cracking, my grip tightening on the phone. You gave him a key already? Well, of course, honey. He'll need access when you're at work or out with friends. It's just easier that way. I honestly couldn't process it. My parents, without a single thought, had completely bypassed me. They'd given him a key before even asking me. My personal space, my home, wasn't mine anymore. It was being handed over without a second thought. The old Emma? She would have just sucked it up. Let things slide. Kept quiet. But not this time. Not anymore. I slowly put my phone down, stood up, and walked over to my front door. The spare key, the one I kept for emergencies, hung innocently on its hook. I stared at it, the weight of a monumental decision pressing down on me. I knew exactly what I had to do. Without another thought, I grabbed that key and walked to the lock. This wasn't about being petty. This was about self-preservation. If Jake was going to have a key, he was going to earn it. And frankly, I didn't trust him. I didn't trust my parents to protect my boundaries. This was about reclaiming my control, my peace. I called a locksmith, got new locks installed that very afternoon. The satisfying click as they locked into place? It wasn't just physical security. It was a feeling of power, a declaration. This wasn't just anger festering. This was action. I was protecting what was mine. As the day wore on, the thought of explaining this to my mom hung heavy. I knew she wouldn't understand. She'd probably call me selfish, accuse me of making things harder than they had to be. But I didn't care. This was my home, and if I had to fight for it, I absolutely would. The next morning, Jake was supposed to show up. Mom called to confirm he was on his way, her voice brimming with excitement about how wonderful it would be for us to spend time together. I didn't say much, just a quiet, "Yeah, sounds good, Mom." When the doorbell rang later that day, I took a deep, fortifying breath. This was it. I knew Jake would be standing there, his bags in hand, that entitled smirk on his face, expecting everything to go exactly as it always had. But this time, things were different. The key he thought he had? It wouldn't work anymore. I opened the door, ready. Jake stood there, that smug smile firmly in place. And then, I watched it falter, crumble as he reached into his pocket and realized his key wouldn't do a thing. Emma, he stammered, holding up the old key. "It's not working." I crossed my arms, meeting his gaze squarely. "I know. You'll have to ring the bell from now on. The old key doesn't work anymore." His face twisted in confusion, then frustration. I could almost see the gears turning, trying to compute this unexpected snag. He wasn't used to not getting what he wanted, instantly. "This isn't funny," Jake said, his voice tightening. "Mom said I could just move in, and now you're changing the locks?" "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "I am." He stood there, completely stunned. I braced myself. The usual manipulation, the pleading, the guilt trips, I knew they were coming. But I was done. I wasn't backing down. Jake stood frozen in the doorway, staring at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. For a moment, he just blinked, like he couldn't comprehend what was happening. I could almost see the wheels in his head turning, trying to figure out how to get the situation back under his control. But I wasn't going to let him. I wasn't going to be the victim in this anymore. "Are you serious right now?" he said, his voice rising slightly, the frustration clear. "Mom told you I'm moving in. You can't just shut me out." I didn't flinch. "I can do whatever I want in my own home, Jake." His face drained of color, and I could see the panic starting to set in. It was like watching a spoiled kid lose their favorite toy, and it made me realize how utterly dependent he'd always been on others for everything, mostly Mom and Dad. But he wasn't getting his way with me. I stepped back, closing the door halfway, not wanting to make a scene in the hallway. But before I could fully close it, he shoved his foot into the gap, stopping me from shutting him out completely. "Don't do this. I have nowhere else to go." His voice had lost its earlier confidence, now carrying a desperate, whiny edge. "I'm sorry, Jake, but that's not my problem," I said calmly, my heart pounding in my chest, but forcing myself to stay steady. "I told Mom I wasn't okay with this. I told her I wasn't ready to have you here. You need to figure it out. His foot jammed further in the gap, and he pushed a little harder, trying to open the door, but I didn't budge. I wasn't giving in. Come on, just let me in. Jake's voice wavered now, no longer demanding, but pleading. Mom will be mad if you don't. You know how she gets. She'll make everything worse for both of us. I could feel the guilt creeping in, like it always did when he played the victim card. He was so good at it. But this time, I wasn't going to fall for it. I don't care, I said firmly, looking him dead in the eyes. You've always had someone to bail you out, but not anymore. Figure it out. Find somewhere else to stay. I watched as Jake's face twisted, a mixture of anger and helplessness flashing in his eyes. He couldn't believe I was actually doing this. It was like he couldn't understand that I'd finally set a boundary. For years, I had let him walk all over me. And now that I was taking control of my own life, he couldn't accept it. Fine, he spat, his voice low, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. You'll regret this, Emma. You always do. I didn't flinch. You'll be fine, Jake. You always are. Without another word, I finally closed the door. The sound of it clicking shut felt like the last barrier between my past and the new life I was trying to build. I leaned back against the door, my pulse still racing. The tension in my body didn't ease right away, but I knew I had done the right thing. I could hear him outside for a few minutes, pacing back and forth in the hallway, muttering to himself. I stayed inside, letting the quiet settle around me, trying to gather my thoughts. Mom called me an hour later. I let it ring 3 times before I finally picked up. Sweetie, what's going on? Jake said you shut him out. You can't just lock him out of your apartment like that. I leaned against the counter, closing my eyes and taking a deep breath before speaking. He's not moving in, Mom. I told you I wasn't okay with it. Emma, don't be so dramatic, she said, her voice sharp. You're being unreasonable. He needs help. He's your brother. I could hear her getting worked up on the other end, but I wasn't going to back down now. I don't care, I said, my voice steady. He's an adult, and he can figure it out. I'm not just going to let him walk all over me anymore. You don't get to make decisions about my life without even asking me. If he needs help, he can figure it out somewhere else. Mom was silent for a moment, the tension between us growing. You're being selfish, she finally said, her voice dripping with disappointment. What happened to being a family? He's your brother. You're supposed to help him when he's in trouble. I've helped him for years, Mom. I snapped. I've done more than enough, but I can't keep sacrificing my own peace for him. You're making a mistake, Emma, she said quietly, and I could hear the hurt in her voice. You're making him feel like he's not welcome, and that's not what family does. I rubbed my temple, feeling a headache starting to build. Maybe he needs to feel that way for once. Maybe it's time he learns that he can't always rely on others to fix his problems. He needs to grow up. The line went quiet again, but I could still hear Mom breathing heavily, the tension on the other side of the phone almost palpable. Finally, she spoke, her voice tight. Do what you want, Emma. But don't expect me to be happy about it. With that, she hung up. I stared at my phone for a moment before setting it down on the counter. I had just cut off the last string of control my family had over me. There was no going back now. Jake wouldn't just move in and ruin my life like before. I had to hold my ground. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. There was more to come. Jake wouldn't let this go easily. And Mom, she'd probably keep calling me selfish until the end of time. But I didn't care anymore. I couldn't. I just needed to get through this. And then maybe I could start living the life I'd always wanted. A life where I wasn't always the one who had to fix everything. The days that followed were a strange mix of tense silence and uneasy phone calls. Jake didn't call me after the door incident, but I could almost feel his presence, hovering like a storm cloud, ready to break. I thought I had made the right decision by standing my ground, but there was this nagging feeling in my gut. I knew my brother too well. If I thought he was just going to accept this and move on, I was horribly wrong. It was a Wednesday evening when the first real sign of trouble came. I had just gotten home from work, still feeling the weight of the argument with Mom. The apartment was quiet, and I figured it would be a calm night. But as I walked to my door, I noticed something strange. A small, folded piece of paper wedged under the door. My heart skipped a beat as I bent down to pick it up, unfolding it carefully. It was a note from Jake. "You don't get to just shut me out, Emma. I'll get in. You can't keep me out forever. The door's not the only way in. See you soon, Jake." I stood there staring at the paper in disbelief. My mind raced, processing those chilling words. I had changed the locks. There was no way he could get in without a key. But this felt like a sinister warning. It was like Jake wasn't just upset, he was escalating. The thought of him actually trying to break into my apartment made me feel sick to my stomach. I couldn't let him do this. I couldn't let him make me feel unsafe in my own home. I quickly went to the door, double-checking the lock. It clicked securely, just as it had when I first installed the new one. But the unsettling feeling didn't go away. I felt like I was being watched, my every movement under scrutiny. The note had rattled me more than I cared to admit. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in my living room, keeping the lights low, my eyes fixed on the door. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. Not for my physical safety, but for what Jake might do next. He'd always been able to manipulate everyone around him, including me. But this was different. This time, I wasn't going to let him have the control. The next day, things escalated even further. I was working from home when I heard a loud, sickening bang at my door. I froze. It wasn't a knock. It was a slam. I rushed to the peephole, my heart hammering in my chest. There he was. Standing in the hallway, holding a crowbar. I couldn't believe it. My mind raced as I watched him jam the tool into the door frame, trying to pry the door open. "Jake!" I shouted through the door, my voice shaking but trying to sound firm. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer, just kept pushing the crowbar deeper into the crack, grunting with frustration. I could hear the wood splintering, the sound enough to send a fresh wave of pure panic through my chest. This wasn't just a temper tantrum anymore. This was an invasion. I backed away from the door, my mind working furiously. What was I supposed to do? Should I call Mom? No, that wouldn't help. This wasn't her problem anymore. It was mine. I grabbed my phone from the table, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. The operator picked up after 2 rings, and I tried to steady my voice. "Hello, I need help," I said, my voice tight with fear. "Someone's trying to break into my apartment. They're using a crowbar on the door. I'm scared." The operator remained incredibly calm, asking for my address and reassuring me that the police were on their way. As I waited, I could hear Jake's grunts growing louder, the metal scraping violently against the door frame. My heart pounded in my ears, the seconds feeling like hours. I heard him shout, his voice muffled through the door. "You can't do this to me, Emma. You'll regret it. Let me in." My fingers clenched around the phone. "No. Leave me alone, Jake." I shouted back, my voice trembling with both fear and a raw, burning anger. For a few moments, there was silence. I thought maybe he had given up. But then the banging started again, louder this time. I could hear the door groaning under the pressure, the wood buckling with each brutal strike. He wasn't going to stop until he got in. I backed away, looking around the apartment for something to defend myself with, just in case. The thoughts were swirling in my head. Should I go out the window? Should I lock myself in the bedroom? I had never imagined my own brother would do something like this. My chest tightened with dread, and I found myself paralyzed with uncertainty. Suddenly, I heard sirens in the distance. The sound of police cars getting closer made my heart race with a mix of relief and terror. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep the door intact, and I definitely didn't want Jake to hurt himself or me trying to break in. And then, just as the sirens neared, Jake let out a frustrated scream. "I hate you. I can't believe you're doing this to me." His words were punctuated by a final, desperate slam of the crowbar. I heard him step back and I hesitated, trying to listen for any sound that might indicate he was leaving, but it was too late. The door splintered, a jagged crack running across the middle. Jake had broken through. Before I could react, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway. The police had arrived. "Police! Step away from the door," a voice commanded. My heart leapt at the sound of the officers. Jake froze, his face turning pale as he realized what was happening. I could hear his breathing pick up, his eyes shifting nervously between the door and the officers. "Get back," one of the officers shouted. "Drop the crowbar." Jake dropped it immediately, his eyes wide with fear. For a moment I just stood there, unable to move. My emotions were a jumbled mess of shock, relief, and pure disbelief at what had just transpired. My brother was still out there, his anger still smoldering, and I had no idea what would happen next. The officers moved in quickly, cuffing Jake and pulling him away from the door. He struggled, but they were fast, and within moments they had him restrained. I stood there, my breath coming in shallow gasps, trying to process everything. I had never imagined that it would come to this. The brutal reality of the situation was sinking in. Jake had truly crossed the line, and I was no longer the one who could fix things for him. One of the officers knocked gently on my now damaged door and entered, giving me a reassuring glance. "We've got him. You're safe now." But even as I nodded in relief, a part of me felt a strange, hollow emptiness. I had lost my brother, and I wasn't sure if I would ever get him back. "Are you okay?" the officer asked, noticing the shock on my face. I took a deep breath, trying to hold it together. "I will be," I said quietly. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The police took Jake away in the back of their squad car, the sound of the engine fading as they drove off. My heart was still pounding in my chest, the adrenaline from the confrontation slowly wearing off. I felt like I was in some sort of surreal, awful dream. My brother, the one I grew up with, the one I had always defended, had just tried to break into my apartment, my home, like a dangerous stranger, and I had to call the police on him. The officer who had been speaking to me, Officer Martinez, gave me a kind, understanding look as he stepped inside the apartment. "You've got a right to be shaken up," he said softly. "If you want, we can stay a little longer. Make sure you're all right." I shook my head, forcing a weak smile. "No, I'm okay. Thank you. I just need some time to process this." He nodded and placed a business card on the table. "Here's my number, just in case you need anything. If Jake contacts you or shows up again, call us immediately." I took the card with a nod, my fingers numb as I held it. "Thank you," I said again, my voice quiet, unsure of what else to say. After Officer Martinez left, I was truly alone. The apartment felt eerily quiet, the air thick with the weight of everything that had just happened. I walked through the living room, running my fingers along the edge of the table, not quite sure what to do next. My life had been turned upside down, and I wasn't sure how to fix any of it. I had always thought that no matter what, family was supposed to come first. But after what Jake had done, I realized how wrong I had been. It wasn't just about family, it was about respect, trust, and boundaries. Jake had crossed all of those lines, and I didn't know if there was a way back from this. The phone rang on the coffee table and I jumped. My stomach twisted as I saw the caller ID. It was Mom. I didn't want to answer, but I knew I had to. With a deep breath, I picked up. "Emma," she said, her voice strained and anxious. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" I didn't know how to answer. "I'm fine, Mom. Physically, at least." My voice wavered as I added, "But Jake? He tried to break into my apartment." I could hear her silence on the other end, followed by a soft sigh. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's been so angry lately, but I never thought it would come to this. I'm so sorry, Emma. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I tried, Mom. I've tried to help him, but I can't do it anymore. He crossed a line, and I can't let him think this is okay. I heard a faint sniffle on the other end. I understand. I'm just so worried about him. He's my son, and I don't know how to fix him. He needs help, Emma. I bit my lip, feeling the weight of her words. I know he does, but I can't be the one to fix him anymore, Mom. I can't let him keep treating me like this. There was a long pause. I could hear Mom's breath hitching, like she was trying to hold back tears. I know you can't, but he's still your brother. I closed my eyes, the words stinging more than I expected. He's not the person I grew up with anymore, Mom. And I don't know if I can ever trust him again. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and I could feel the gap growing between us. I'm sorry, Emma, she finally said, her voice small. I'm sorry he did this to you. I'm sorry too, I whispered, my own tears threatening to fall. But I need some space. I need some time to think. I understand, she said softly, her voice breaking. I love you, Emma. We'll get through this. I promise. I hung up, feeling the weight of the conversation settle deep in my chest. I wasn't sure if things would ever go back to normal. I wasn't sure if I even wanted them to. The next few days were a blur. Jake's arrest was the talk of the family, but there was little support or comfort for me. Mom had tried to call several times, but I didn't have the energy to talk to her. I was too hurt, too confused, and deep down I was scared. I didn't know what Jake was going to do once he got out of jail. What if he came after me again? I stayed in my apartment, keeping the blinds closed and the doors locked. Every time I heard a car pull up outside, my heart raced, wondering if it was Jake, but nothing happened. Days passed and then a week. The silence was almost as deafening as the confrontation itself. Then, on the 8th day, I got a message from Jake. It was simple. I'm sorry, Emma. I messed up. I just didn't know how else to deal with everything. I was angry. Please, can we talk? I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to block him and just move on with my life. But another part of me, one that still remembered the brother I once had, felt a pang of sympathy. I sat there for what felt like hours, the message flashing on my phone screen. And in the end, I decided to respond. Not with forgiveness, but with boundaries. You hurt me, Jake, and I can't let that go. You need help, but I can't fix you. I'm not your punching bag anymore. If you really want to make things right, start by getting the help you need. Until then, I can't talk to you. I hit send and set the phone down, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't resolution, it wasn't closure, but it was the first step in healing for both of us. And as I finally put my phone down, the apartment felt strangely quiet, but it wasn't the suffocating silence of before. It was the sound of a new beginning. I'd walked through fire, faced down the person who once terrified me, and in doing so, I'd finally truly claimed my own life. I still don't know what the future holds for me and my family, but one thing's for sure, I'm not the old Emma anymore. And I'll never let anyone, not even my own brother, steal my peace again.